Hello, everybody, and good morning if you're in the United States. Welcome to the third and last of the three-day symposium series named The Next Generation Scientists. This event is organized by the Trainee Advisory Committee of the American Physiological Society with the support of InsideScientific. My name is Miguel Zárate, and I am the Trainee Advisory Committee representative for the Central Nervous System section. The topic of our last session is leadership opportunities through your professional society and community. And as it mentions in the title, it will discuss about the benefits of growing in your career through a professional society, as well as by doing community outreach. Without further ado, I will introduce to both the speakers. First of all, we will have Dr. Carmen De Miguel, an assistant professor of medicine from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And she will be followed by Scott Steen. He is the executive director of the American Physiological Society. We're going to start the presentation with Dr. Carmen De Miguel, assistant professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And by the way, Dr. Carmen De Miguel is the 2019 Del Benos Early Career Award recipient from the American Physiological Society. And this award is given to professionals who have made outstanding contributions to the physiology community and demonstrated dedication and commitment to furthering broader the goals of the physiology community. Without further ado, Carmen De Miguel will start the presentation with science outreach.
Okay, hello. Thank you for being here today. And I wanted to start by thanking the Trainee Advocacy Committee, and specifically Miguel as well as Kosha, for inviting me to talk to you today about something that I am very passionate about, which is science outreach and community engagement. So for the next 20 or 25 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about what is science outreach, and I'm going to give you reasons of why this is important. We are going to go over benefits of doing science outreach for you and for the community, for you as a scientist and for the community. I will give you some examples of science outreach activities that you can consider doing once you start doing community engagement. And in this point, I'm going to give you some examples of things that you could do despite the pandemic. Okay, so you don't have an excuse to not doing things because of the pandemic. And then the last point is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience with science outreach. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so if you have learned something about this in this new Next Generation Scientist series webinars, is that scientific research doesn't involve only doing experiments in your lab and just publishing, but you need to educate yourself in other skills that are going to make you a very rounded and well-rounded scientist. So the times in where scientists were isolated in their labs doing experiments and only talking to scientists are well past. So they are past and gone. So nowadays, to be a good scientist, you have to do many more things. And one of the things that we know is that governments all over the world are cutting funding for science. And not only that, but we also know that the voice of the community has become more and more important in choosing what kind of research is going to be funded and what kind of research will not be funded. So it is crucial to have a direct engagement of scientists with the general public nowadays. So the modern scientist has to have an open dialogue first with policymakers, and this is incredibly important because these people are the ones that are going to be writing regulations and crafting budgets that are going to affect your research and your funding, your ability to do research. The second thing is that we know that many of us are funded by federal money. That means that this money comes from taxpayers, and we have a moral obligation to bring science to the community and share with them what kind of science and what are we using the money that they gave us to do science in. So you have to really have an open communication with the general public. Now, finally, you also have to have an open dialogue with the media. And this is important because you are going to use them as a megaphone to make the community understanding what science does for society and what good we do in relating to diseases, for example, or to just understanding the world better. So all of these things are relationships that you have to grow when you are growing when you are growing as a scientist. So how do we define science outreach? So there are many different definitions, but if we put it as a very simple statement, we can say that it's any effort that brings or promotes public awareness and understanding of science in the community. Many people come to science outreach from many different perspectives, but it is easy to think of science outreach as a mix between science education, science communication, and science policy, as I hinted at in my previous slide. So what are the benefits of doing science outreach or community engagement? So first, we are going to look at what benefits are there for the community or for the public. So when we are doing STEM outreach, we are increasing the accessibility to scientific information. And when we are doing this, we are really fostering a greater understanding of science and the scientific method by the community. And this is important. You may not realize because you are a scientist yourself, but many members of the community don't have access to scientists, so they don't know any scientists personally. So when you take your time to talk to the community, they get this chance to see that you are a normal person, that you are one of them, and that really increases the understanding of science by the community. And then the fourth point that I wanted to highlight in here is one that is very important, which is that whenever we bring science to the community, we are really attracting new generations of students to dedicate their career to science. And this is important for science per se, because we want science to continue in the future. So these are all the benefits for the public. But what about you? What about you as a scientist? Why do you care? And why would you do science outreach? So I'm going to give you a series of reasons, and hopefully I convince you that you should start if you are not already doing STEM outreach. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is whenever you do science outreach or STEM community engagement, what you get is a lot of motivation and a lot of fulfillment. So we know that we are scientists and we use hours and hours and even weeks trying to make an experiment work. So that can be very frustrating. So I can tell you that if you kind of take a little piece or a little time in your schedule to go to the community and talk to them about science, this really puts things in perspective, and it really makes you remember why you became a scientist in the first place. Doing STEM outreach also improves your presentation skills because you are able to bring concepts that may be kind of complicated, scientific complicated topics. And what you do is you are able to tell them to an audience that doesn't have a background in science. And whenever you do this, you are really exercising your ability to communicate science. And this is going to be good for you whenever you go write that paper or write that grant. So that's something that you have to really develop, a skill that you need for your scientific career. Then point number 3 is obviously important for you when you increase the awareness for how science is good for society in the community. That is going to translate into better funding for science. Because obviously, as I was saying before, the community are taxpayers that are going to give their money for you to do science. Then number 4 is that doing outreach in the community really broadens your toolkit. And why do I say this? Well, there are many different kinds of activities that you can do for STEM outreach. But say, for example, that you decide to write a blog. When you are doing that, you are really exercising your writing skills. And that's going to be important for your career in science because you have to write grants, you have to write papers, and you have to really write a lot. Now, what if you decide to design or kind of a stand for a science festival, for example, or a science fair? So you are really exercising your creativity, and you are also exercising your troubleshooting. And that's something that also translates to your scientific career. And then, for example, if you decide to organize your own STEM outreach activity, you are going to exercise your ability to manage other volunteers. You are going to be able to organize and have budgets and things like that that are going to be also important for you in your scientific career. Now, besides all of these good things, you can also expand your network. For example, if you decide to do advocacy and you decide to talk to policymakers, you are going to start expanding your network by meeting these politicians or meeting these policymakers. So you are expanding your network at that level. But if you decide to do an outreach activity in schools in your area, you are going to also meet the principal, you're going to meet teachers, you could even meet the parents of the students that you're going to be talking to. So you are increasing your network within your community, and that's also important. And then whenever you do STEM outreach activities, you are going to also be in charge or in contact with other people that are passionate about science communication. This would be other scientists, maybe collaborations can come out of it. So you, in general, doing STEM outreach, you are really increasing your network. And then the last point is very important. It is that it's fun. You have to remember that when you got into science was because you think that science is fun, right? So whenever you do this outreach to the community, it really reminds you of why you became a scientist in the first place. So now that I gave you all of these good reasons to do outreach, I know that it could be kind of intimidating when you decide to start your own outreach activity. So I am going to give you a series of examples of activities that you could maybe consider doing in your community. And the first advice that I wanted to give you is to choose something that really you enjoy. Because if it is something that brings you joy, you're going to do it much more often and you're going to enjoy it much more. Okay, so the first example is, for example, if you are very passionate about doing science advocacy and you really want to make sure that biomedical research, for example, has continued support from the public, you could consider do advocacy activities. And when you do this, you can start small. So you could start in your small network and you can talk to your family, to your friends, or even your neighbors, and you can talk to them about science and what kind of problems you see in science or how they can help science keep developing. That's one way of doing it. Then you can also contact your local media. It could be a local newspaper, your local radio station, and you can talk to them about research issues. Many of us are very active in social media. So you can use these platforms such as Twitter or, for example, Facebook. And you can use those platforms to bring awareness to how science, like basic and clinical science, helps society fight disease, for example. Then if you want to go even further, you could also contact your representatives. So you could contact your senator, for example, or your governor. And if you want to go that route, I would recommend that you check the APS website, where there is a long list of resources that kind of guide you of how to go about calling your representative, or if you want to write a letter, they give you pointers on how to do that. And I put the link to this website in the resource tab that you have on the right of your screen. And now, even if you want to get more experience in doing science advocacy, you could also apply to the APS, to the American Physiological Society Early Career Advocacy Fellowship. This is a fantastic opportunity for you. It is a 2-year fellowship that is designed for either postdoctoral fellows or early career or early faculty members, so junior faculty. And what they do is they pair you with members of the APS Science Policy Committee. And in that way, you learn how to design your advocacy skills. And this is great. And obviously, these skills you are going to use it not only during this fellowship, but you are going to take them for the rest of your scientific career. If you are a graduate student, there are also other opportunities for you within the APS. You could apply to the Graduate Student Ambassador Program. And this is a program in where you would be an advocate for physiology among graduate students, among other graduate students, or among undergraduate students. So I forgot to put it in here in this slide, but you have it in the resource tab. So I suggest that you go and check it out. Okay, so the second kind of science outreach activities that I wanted to bring up here is what I'm calling public presentations. So an example of this is, for example, the science cafes. So this is a global initiative that brings one or two scientists to a casual setting, such as a coffee shop or a pub. And there is just a conversation between the scientists and the members of the community that are in that location, like in the coffee shop, for example. So the good thing about this kind of activity is that because it's such a relaxed space, the members of the community don't feel intimidated by the presence of the scientists, and the scientists can talk about any scientific topic that they want to share with the community. So this is a very easy way of breaking that distance that exists between the community and scientists, and in a very relaxed atmosphere. Now, if you want to do something similar to this, you can also check other programs that are designed by institutions. And I wanted to highlight in here something that we have at UAB in my institution. It's called Discoveries in the Making. So this was a program that was designed by the graduate school here at UAB. And it was to give an opportunity to trainees, such as graduate students or postdoctoral fellows, to bring the science and explain their science to members in our community. So this is an awesome opportunity to kind of exercise your ability to tell what kind of science you are doing to someone that doesn't have that scientific background. And it really improves your communication skills. Normally they do this kind of stuff, this kind of activities in a very relaxed atmosphere, similar to what I just talked to you about, the science cafes. So it is normally, they started doing it in a public library, but then recently they moved to a restaurant kind of place. And obviously now with the pandemic, we cannot do it in person. So they have started to do it via Zoom. And what you have in the screen is the last flyer that we had from this program. And it was done a couple of weeks back by Luke Dunaway, who is a graduate student in our program. And he has given me permission to share the YouTube link. It's also in the resource tab. And so you can go and check his presentation. And I really suggest that you check if your institution has a program similar to this, so you can start doing it, because it really is great for increasing your science communication skills. And if there is none in your presentation, in your institution, I suggest that you think about starting it. You can get together with other trainees in your community and then just reach to a public library or to a coffee shop that is near your institution, and you can start doing this kind of stuff. Okay, so the third kind of science outreach activity that I wanted to bring up here is lab tours. So you can easily invite members of the community to come to your institution and to your lab, and you can do this only in your lab, or you can invite. You can do kind of a departmental thing. So it will be like an open door day in where members of the community can come to your department and they can visit different labs in your department. So this is great because in a way the members of the community are allowed into your space, so they see how scientists work. And then you can show them what kind of equipment you use. You can even let them play with pipettes or things in the lab, obviously nothing dangerous. But if you are going to go this way, I would suggest that you make sure that, obviously, if you are a graduate student or a trainee, just make sure that your PI really allows you to do this, or he knows that, or she knows that you are planning on doing this. And obviously, also tell the rest of the people in the lab, so they know that there are going to be people from the community coming in. And this is a great way also to break that ice between the community and the scientists. Obviously, this is something that now it's kind of limited because of the pandemic. So institutions are getting creative. And there is, for example, this the University of Bristol in the UK has designed online lab tours. So this kind of works like what you would do in the street, how do you call it, the street view in Google Maps, in where you just, you have kind of a video, and then you see that you have these arrows on the screen in the bottom of the picture, And if you click there, it just moves you along the institution. So they have done these kind of videos with different parts of the institution. So for example, in the screen, you can see that you are in the animal facility where they have the animal, they have the mice. So you can see different parts of the institution, and at the end of this tour, you can talk to a scientist, like one-on-one. You can chat with them and ask them questions about anything. So this is another option to do these online lab tours. Then the fourth activity that I wanted to bring up is informal education. And one that I wanted to especially show you is this event that was put together by a university in Switzerland. And what they did is what they call scientific speed dating, or speed dating with scientists. So what they did is a very simple thing. They just took a couple of, like some tables in an open square in the city. And what they did is they had a group of scientists that were sitting there, and then they would have members of the public talk to them for a very limited time. It would be like 5 minutes, for example, and then they can ask questions about their research. They can ask questions about how a day in the lab is, or anything like that. So this is great to kind of, again, break the ice between scientists and the public, and break down stereotypes that many members of the community have about scientists being someone there very far, that they are very different from there. So this is especially good for example, high school students or members of the community that don't really have any contact with science. So in that way, we can bring science to the community in a very relaxed way. Obviously, you could do this not only in an open space, but you could do it in a coffee shop, or you could do it in a mall, or anything like that. So there are many possibilities. Another example for informal education is what you have on the screen now. This was an event that was organized by the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and it was called Spring into Science. So what they decided to do was they first recruited scientists from the area that are active scientists, that they do research, and they brought them to the museum for one night. And at the same time, they also invited students from schools in the area to come to the museum with their parents, just to learn about careers in science. And as you see, the scientists didn't just talk to them from a panel, but they had stations in where they did some little experiments, and they could talk to the kids about how fun science is while they were doing a little bit of science in front of them. So this is one option that it would be very well for you if you have a science museum near your institution or near your home. You can contact them and volunteer if they have this kind of event planned. And then the last kind of science outreach activity that I wanted to bring you here is visits to K-12 schools. So you can go visit elementary, middle, or high school, and you can do it in many different ways. If it is only you could go volunteer to talk to one of the classrooms, and you could give an example of how your day in the lab is, for example. Or you could, recruit all the graduate students or postdoctoral fellows, and you could create like a little panel and then talk to the students about how you got interested in science, or, for example, different career paths in science. So you are giving them this information, and hopefully they get interested and they ask you a lot of questions. Another way of volunteering with the schools is just to volunteer to judge in a school science fair. And this is something that the schools are always open to, because they are always constantly looking for people to judge those science projects. And this is a great way of giving back to the community. So I suggest that you contact your local school and see if there is a possibility of doing this. And then the last kind of outreach activity that I wanted to mention is the kind of activity that I do in my institution. So what we do is we take hands-on experiments to elementary schools in the area. So when I started doing this, I really wanted to increase, because it's something that I am very passionate about, to increase the diversity in the STEM field. So I wanted to reach to the schools that were in underserved areas in our city. So to do that, I contacted this organization that is called Teach for America. So I partnered with them, and they matched me with teachers that were teaching in schools that were in underserved areas in the city. And I also partnered with the American Physiological Society. I was one of the outreach fellows. I think that it was 2015, 2017, something like that. So anyway, they funded some of my, the supplies that I needed to do these activities and so on. So basically, what I do is every year I recruit scientists from our institution, from our department, and you have here a picture of everybody smiling because it's always fun to do these things every year. So we just visit the schools, and because I like to keep the activity in small groups, what I do is I break this group of 15 or so scientists in groups of 2 or 3 per classroom. So in that way, we bring the science to the environment of the student. It's not that we are taking the students to a big place. So you are bringing them to their classroom. So we have like 2 to 3 scientists per classroom. And then because we are a renal physiology group, I wanted to bring an activity that was somehow related to what we do in the lab. So I designed an activity in where we are basically teaching them how a kidney works and how it works when you have a kidney that works properly, and what happens to your kidney when you have a disease such as diabetes or high blood pressure, for example. So as you see in the picture, many of our students are either African Americans or Hispanics. So we know that these are populations that have high prevalence of kidney disease. So it was very important for me to bring this kind of knowledge to them so they can understand, since they are little, how important it is to take good care of your kidneys, and how if you go, you have to be really careful with your kidneys, and then how they could go to their families and then talk to their grandpa that may have diabetes, or their parents that have high blood pressure, and talk to them about going to the doctor and take care of the kidneys. So this was very important to us, and we started with only 1 classroom, and now we do 4 schools, and we reach almost 300 students per year. So and it's a lot of fun. So I would really recommend you to start doing something like this. And then obviously this is in person. This year we cannot do it because of COVID, but I have found about another organization that is called Skype a Scientist. And this is a great organization. You have the website in the bottom of the screen. And this is an organization that matches teachers and classrooms with scientists that want to talk about science. So you can go, you just fill a form that is super easy. You just say what kind of science you want to talk to the kids about, and they match you with a classroom. And then normally it would look like this. So you will have, you will be in the screen, obviously via Skype, and then you will be in the classroom, and all the kids will be there. And all the sessions that I have seen, all of them are super happy about having a scientist in the classroom, and they ask you thousands of questions. So this is something that is doable during COVID-19. So I really recommend that you go. I put also the link in the resource tab. So you can go and check this out and volunteer your time to do this. I mean, it's really fulfilling. Okay, so now that I have given you all of these options, before you choose what you want to do for your outreach efforts, I would suggest that you think about 4 things. First of all, how much time you want to devote to this activity. Then how much preparation you need for that specific activity that you want to do. How old do you want your audience to be? Do you want to talk to adults, or you prefer to do it with children? Or also, how much hands-on you need for the activity that you are planning. So for example, if you are someone that needs, that has very little time and wants to talk to adults, you can decide to do one of the public presentations that are in a coffee shop or in Discoveries in the Making, for example. Or if you want to talk to children, you can do kind of the activities that I do with my schools, in where you go and visit the school and you have a couple of hands-on activities, and then you just go ahead and do them. Now I am going to just leave you with this thought. Remember that when you started doing science, you did it because you thought that science is fun. So I want to ask you to think about sharing your passion for science with your community by getting engaged in science outreach. And that's it. So thank you very much.
As you mentioned, it is so important for our career, but also very rewarding as scientists to promote the awareness of science to our communities. And yes, science is fun. I completely agree with you. And that's what makes us through difficult situations.
Yep.
Importantly, many of the science community outreach activities that you mentioned, Dr. De Miguel, indicated that this can be done through the sponsor of a professional society. In this particular case, the American Physiological Society, through a committee or different sections that we have. Complementing Dr. De Miguel's presentation, we will have our next speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce Scott Steen. He is the Executive Director of the American Physiological Society, and he will talk about the different benefits for us trainees when joining a professional society.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. It is, I'm delighted to be here with you. So I want to talk a bit, really what I'm going to talk about goes really hand in hand with what Carmen was talking about. But before I start, before I tell you why I think it's really important, give you the reasons why it's important that you join your professional society, and then talk about how you can engage. I want to give you a brief overview of APS. The American Physiological Society was founded 133 years ago. Our mission is to advance scientific discovery, understand life, and improve health. And of course, we do that applying the lens of physiology. Our membership, because physiology is so broad, our members really encompass virtually every area of physiological research and the biological sciences. And we have a community of about 10,000 scientists, educators, and trainees who are engaged right now from 90 different countries. Well, we are the American Physiological Society. The reality is we are an international organization, and almost 25% of our members are from outside the US. We are well known, I think, globally for our scholarly journals. We publish 16 scholarly journals, really covering all areas of physiology, and as well as advances in teaching physiology. We have 12 sections representing all areas of physiological research, ranging from cardiovascular to water and electrolyte homeostasis. Those are, and pretty much everything in between. And we also have a section for what has become a growing part of our membership, which are teachers of physiology. The APS also offers hundreds of awards, grants, and fellowships, and most of those are specifically for trainees and for students. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We are well known for being one of the principal sponsors of experimental biology, which is our annual meeting right now, which we do in conjunction with a number of other societies. And we sponsor many other conferences and dozens of online programs. We also engage very directly in advocacy with major scientific institutions, with on Capitol Hill, with the administration. We offer a range of career services and career programs. We publish the Physiologist magazine. We have lots and lots of online resources and many, many other services. We are here to serve the physiology community in really any way that we can. And so I would encourage you to just hop on the website and explore, because you will find undoubtedly something that speaks directly to your needs. So I want to talk a bit about the why you should really prioritize not only joining, but getting engaged in APS or in any scientific society. It really is one of the keystone decisions of your career in science. When I arrived at APS 2.5 years ago, I arranged to talk with all of our council members and officers and our committee chairs and all of our section chairs, just really to introduce myself and to hear about their experience with APS. And they are a collection of really eminent scientists, people who have written the textbooks and who have distinguished themselves through research and teaching. And it was really interesting to hear from them how important their engagement with APS and with other scientific societies was as well. So one of the things, the themes I heard over and over again is that their involvement with APS was one of the single most important things that they had done in their careers. It was something that influenced the direction of the science they pursued. It was how they met their mentors. It was what shined a spotlight on them, on their work, and on them as scientists. It gave them opportunities that they would not have had otherwise had they not been involved. So this idea, which I think a lot of students don't really think about engagement in a professional society, engagement in your scientific society as being central to your career. You think perhaps it's something that is on the side, but the people that I talked to, these eminent scientists said over and over again that this was one of the most important decisions that they had made in their careers. So I want to share some of their stories with you and hopefully let them convince you of why it is really important for you to get deeply involved in your professional society, be it APS or some other society. So this is David Gutterman. He is the chair of our publications committee. He is a well-known cardiovascular researcher at the Medical College of Wisconsin. He's an MD. Probably nearly 20% of our members are MDs. The rest are PhDs, but all are practicing scientists or educators, and most of our members are basic scientists. So David really talked to me, told me his story about his engagement with APS, and said that APS for him was a place of scientific firsts. It's where he did his first oral abstract. It's where he published his first paper. It is where he had an opportunity to meet his scientific heroes, the people he respected most in science. And because of that, because of the sort of foundation that was laid for him as a student and a trainee at APS, it really, in many ways, set the tone for his career. This is Patricia Halpin. She is the chair of our teaching section. She really is focused primarily on undergraduate teaching of physiology. And Patricia talked about how she was able to leverage her experience in APS to, be it the awards she won, that meetings, she was able to leverage that to get early tenure and additional promotions. So, and that's, again, sort of shows the power of this kind of engagement. Janice Urban is the chair of our central nervous system section. And Janice, when we talked, spoke about how she met lifelong colleagues and friends who became for her a critical network to support her decisions about her science, to support her professional decisions, who really became the sounding board for her career. And this I think is a theme pretty much with everyone I've talked to, that engagement in APS is really about creating a community. It is about the human involvement, the social aspects of science that really kind of knits a career together. So this is Anne Schreehofer, an APS counselor, a brand new APS counselor. And I think she really raised an interesting point with me that I heard again and again, which is that scientific societies provide your professional home, your scientific home. And it is very likely that throughout your career, you will move from employer to employer, from institution to institution. You won't stay at the same place the entire time. But what happens with a society like APS is it becomes really the place, the solid through your whole career, the place that you can always come back to, where you can connect with your colleagues, that really provides the rootedness that lasts your entire career. Carmen, also an APS counselor, talked about how she was able to meet people who shared her scientific interests. And I think this is also part of this idea of a scientific home, that because you will meet people who are doing the same kind of science that you're doing, and it really allows you to bounce ideas off of people and have an important scientific sounding board as well. Tim Mush is also an APS counselor, and Tim talked about how this really becomes an opportunity, much like what Carmen was talking about. APS becomes an opportunity to both serve and to lead, and to gain a whole set of skills that benefit you in your career, that you probably, that will aid you in the laboratory, but you probably won't learn in the laboratory. And this is these kind of leadership skills that you get by being engaged in APS or another scientific society it's a really unique training ground to make a difference. And then finally, Melissa, chair of our respiration section, Melissa Bates is an assistant professor, and so she is a younger member, fairly early in her career, and she talked about how welcoming APS is, that no matter where she has gone in the society, she has had people just offer her help and open doors. So I encourage you that this is the starting point. Joining is only $25 for students. It is $50 for postdocs. Often your lab or your supervisor will provide funds for this. So if you aren't a member, I would really encourage you to join the society. Secondly, the society provides enormous opportunity for both students and trainees to begin to share your science. There are lots and lots of ways that you can do this. You can submit for EB, experimental biology, abstracts for posters. You can go for your first oral abstract. There are opportunities that a number of our journals provide for trainees and early career professionals. You can submit articles and ideas to our blogs, iSpy, which is a blog that really is focused on communicating science to the general public. It was just won a major award for being one of the best society scientific blogs in the country, and those links are in the resources as well. So there are lots and lots of ways for you to begin to actually engage with us as a scientist. Carmen mentioned this as well. You can apply for awards, and frankly, APS really excels at supporting trainees and students and early career scientists through awards. We give away more than $1 million a year in awards annually. And the majority of that amount of money goes to students and trainees. Our awards range from small awards of a couple $100 and membership in the society or your registration for meetings to prestigious awards like the Porter Fellowships for underrepresented minorities. That those awards are for $28,000 each. We also provide, and this is our single biggest award in the society, is for postdoctoral fellows. And so we give 5 awards of $50,000 annually for postdoctoral fellows. So there are just a huge number of awards you can explore, and the link to that is also in your resources. Get involved in sections. Now, this is something I heard over and over again. Our sections are really the heart of our community. It is where the easiest place to build relationships, and we have all sorts of there are trainee leaders who serve on our section advisory councils, but sections are really interested in finding ways for you to engage. And so it's something you can explore on our website, but you can also, if you're a member, get in contact with the chair of your section, get in contact with any member of your section steering committee, and you will find that you would be greeted with absolutely open arms in our sections, that they want you to be part of the society, and they will find a place for you. And then finally here, I would encourage you to attend meetings. It is often the easiest and most basic and way for you to begin to experience the society. Experimental biology, as I mentioned, is our biggest meeting. It has over 8,000 people. It can be a little overwhelming. We currently do that with 4 other partner societies. In 2023, we're going to be moving to an independent annual meeting. EB will be no more. Each of the societies are actually going to do their own annual meetings. So that meeting will be a little bit smaller, probably in the 3,000 person range, but really showing up at the annual meeting will give you a real sense of what we are all about and how you might engage in all that we have to offer. I would also encourage you to check out our smaller conferences. They're often much more easy to navigate and offer you opportunities to have much more one-on-one contact with scientists who I think will really be people that you respect and that you'll be able to learn from. We also offer dozens of webinars online and professional development programs, and all of that, again, is on our website. So with that, before we get to Q&A, I just want to say that this is, I think, a taste, what Carmen and I have offered you, of ways that you can really begin to reach out and shape your careers beyond what you do in the laboratory or in your university. It is really important to move beyond the walls of your lab. And one of my mentors said that science is social, and it is. And science is a collaborative process, and it really transcends the boundaries of any single institution. So joining APS, joining a scientific society will really open doors for you that you will not be able to open otherwise. So please get involved. And with that, thank you, and we will move on to Q&A.
All right. What's the best way to get involved with APS if you're thinking from a trainee perspective? And the follow-up on that is, when is the best time to actually get involved?
Well, the best time is now. And the best time is, there is no reason to wait. And I would start with your section. I mean, I think sections just offer, they are sort of smaller gateways. They are sort of societies within societies. They often will help shape your future scientific interests, and they really are set up in ways to invite trainees in to help shepherd your career. And the other thing I would do is, if you can, working with your supervisor, start to stake out meetings that you might go to. I mean, I think it's important for you to sort of early on experience sort of overview that particularly EB or our annual meeting will provide for you as far as seeing all that's available to you.
And if I can chip in, I became involved with APS through the water and electrolyte section when I was a graduate student. And I have been involved since then. And it really was a very good way of learning how your society works from the inside. And you get a great opportunity to meet people from many different places. So it was great. So I really would encourage you guys to join as soon as possible, because it's all positive.
Okay, so follow-up question, that's going to be question to Carmen. How do you manage your time between doing science and having extra time for the outreach?
So obviously science is, and especially when you're a trainee, your classes and your experiments are very important, but I really think that you can still find time to do outreach activities. So normally I do it because we are doing visits to schools, it has to be during the time that the schools are open, right? So it has to be during the day. So if you're going to be a trainee doing this, I would recommend that you kind of organize your experiments for that week in a way that you are not, in the middle of your timeline that you have to collect a sample or something. So you just make sure that you organize it properly. Obviously, I would contact my PI and I would make sure that they are fine with me, they are supportive of me doing this. If not, if you're going to do one of the other things that I talked about, like the Science Cafe or the Discoveries on the Making, those things are done normally after hours. So it would be like in the afternoon after 4 or 5, like in the evening. So you can do it in your own time. There are other things that you can do during the weekend, like the museum visits and things like that. You can do it during the weekend, so it doesn't have to interfere with your normal time in the lab, for example, or your classes. So it's totally doable. It's just planification. Just try to think, okay, I want to do it this time. And again, remember that table that I had at the end of my presentation. In there, you can decide which kind of activity would be better for the time that you can use. So in that way, you can decide which is better for you and then plan it accordingly.
All right, thank you. Now the question is STEM outreach considered as continual professional development, and can it be documented as one?
So is the question regarding teachers or regarding trainees doing STEM outreach? We don't know, right?
That will.
So I have to say that I'm not aware of you getting credits for doing this. I'm assuming that maybe looking through different societies, maybe this is something that is doable. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't do it for the credits, but I understand that it could be a good way of bringing more people to do it. Because if you get something out of it, maybe they could be more prone to do it. So I don't know. I cannot give you an answer.
Okay, but from a perspective of promotion or tenure track positions, that is something that will be occurring on your CV and is taken under consideration, right?
Yeah, that is true. Yes, sorry, I didn't think about that point. Yes, so when you are a faculty member, for example, when you are up for promotion, you have to excel in 3 parts, right? So you have to be research, if you are in a research institution, teaching, and then service. So this can be as I told you, outreach is in between science education, science policy, and science communication. So it could be between service and teaching. So that for sure is going to give you points. It's not that you get credits, but obviously it's going to help you for your promotion. Besides making you better as a human being, like doing these things for the community is always good.
right? Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask you the very last question because we're running out of time here, and I'll promise we're going to answer all the other questions that we have submitted, and they're going to be posted. So the very last question for both of you is, what is the most rewarding part of that job, of that involvement in APS for you?
Do you want to talk, Scott, first?
Sure. I mean, I've talked to many members and trainees, and really, we offer a ton of resources. But I think the key about being engaged in APS, it is the human part. It's being part of a dynamic, caring community of people who really want to see you succeed. And that's hard to replace.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's why I am a member of the APS. Basically, it's, as I said, it's my scientific home, and I have grown. You know, I became a grown-up in there. So I have met so many different people, and I really have grown meeting them. You know, so it is always very supportive community, and it really helps you. You can find collaborators, you can find friends, and it is really a nice place to be.
Once again, Dr. Carmen De Miguel and Scott Steen, thank you very much for participating, and we'll see you in another opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.